everyone. My name is Patty Valdovinos, and welcome to today's Your Author program. I am the librarian in the Multilingual Collections Department, and I am here with my colleague, Celia Avila de Santiago, senior librarian at the Junipero Serra Branch Library of the Los Angeles Public Library. Hi, Celia.
Hi, Patty. It is our pleasure today to host the Your Author series. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate your thoughts, comments, and questions throughout the whole program. Also, don't forget to email ecdept@lapl.org, so right here on the screen, to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win a copy of today's book, Feathered Serpent and the Five Suns by Duncan Tonatiuh.
In today's Your Author program, writer and illustrator Duncan Tonatiuh will discuss his new book, Feathered Serpent and the Five Suns, which we just held up. And we will also throw in a few questions about the book he illustrated, which is Child of the Flower Song People by Gloria Amezcua. Duncan's many accolades include Pura Belpre Illustration Honors, Tomas Rivera Awards, and America's Awards. He grew up in Mexico and attended Parsons School of Design in New York City. Duncan's work is primarily inspired by Mixtec art, and he aims to create work that honors the past but remains relevant to current and future generations.
We want to thank our generous donors, the Lenore S and Bernard A. Greenberg Fund, and the Library Foundation for helping the library bring these amazing author and illustrator programs to everybody. So thank you very much to our donors. And now for what we've all been waiting for, super excited, real jazzed. Welcome, Duncan.
Yay. Hi, Duncan.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Is it, how's the weather over there? You're in Mexico right now, right?
Yes, so I'm in San Miguel de Allende, which is where I grew up, and I've been living back here in San Miguel for several years now. I started coming back after I graduated from college, part of the year, but now I'm here full time. And yeah, the weather is really nice. It's been raining a lot this summer, which is great because we didn't get a lot of rain last year, and this year we're getting a lot of rain, so it's good.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we asked that because it miraculously started raining in LA, so we were very jazzed about it. LA people don't get a lot of rain, so
yeah, it's been cloudy. It's nice.
All right. So thank you so much for Duncan for taking the time to be here with us today. It's wonderful to have you here so we can get to know more about you, your creative process, and your work with Feathered Serpent and the Five Suns. So before we begin, can you start us off by sharing your favorite quote of the book?
Favorite quote of the book? I guess I'll just start with the beginning. It says, if you can see there, it is said by the elders that before our time there were 4 other Tonatiuhs or sons. During the first Tonatiuh, the gods created humans by covering sacred bones with mud. The humans they made were big. They were giants, but they were clumsy. They would fall and break. These humans turned into mountains. And so then the book goes on to talk about the different times that the gods tried creating humans. The second time they tried, they were too small, and so the humans turned into fish. They made them with mud again. The third time they tried, they used corn paste. They used masa de maíz instead, and the humans were the right size and shape, but they did not want to honor the gods, so the gods became angry and turned them into monkeys. The fourth time they tried, the gods gave them a heart, and so these humans were the right size and shape. They honor the gods, but they didn't want to work. They just wanted to play and sing, and so the gods turned them into birds that fly and sing. And so then the gods didn't want to create humans anymore, and they were tired, and they gave the sacred bones of creation to Mictlantecutli, the god of the underworld. But Feathered Serpent, Quetzalcoatl, the god of knowledge, he wanted to try and create humans one more time. And so then the book goes on to describe his journey through Mictlan, through the different regions of Mictlan, to recuperate the sacred bones of creation and create humans one last time. And that's why the book is called Feathered Serpent and the Five Suns.
Cool.
That's awesome. We both loved it. So we thought it was funny, all the different stages, making him out of corn paste and then they didn't like what they were doing, so they turned them into monkeys. That made me giggle. I was at the public desk just like, oh my God. So we were wondering what sparked the idea for Feathered Serpent and the Five Sons, and what the publishing process was like for you, and the research and everything.
Yeah, so I mean, Quetzalcoatl, Feather Serpent is a very iconic god. It's very kind of mysterious. Um, there's just a lot of myths and a lot of stories. There's Quetzalcoatl, the god, but there was also a Toltec king named Topiltzin-Quetzalcoatl. And so there's a lot of myths related to Quetzalcoatl, the god, a lot of legends related to Topiltzin-Quetzalcoatl, the man, the king priest. And so it's just something that, when I was kind of thinking of ideas for a new book, I actually first thought of Feather Serpent, of making a book about Quetzalcoatl. I don't know, I would say at least 5 years ago, probably more. And the first time I wrote a manuscript, and I tried to include all these different stories, all these different legends, because he's involved in different creation myths and the creation of the world and the creation of humans. He is the one that brings corn to man. And so I wanted to include it all. And so I wrote a manuscript and I sent it to my editor, an editor I've been working with at Abrams for many years now. And he said, this story is kind of interesting, but it's too confusing. There's too much going on here. I don't know about this, And so then I let the manuscript sit. I worked on some other projects. And then I guess a couple of years ago, I looked at the manuscript again, and I decided to focus on that one story, on the five sons, on the story of the five sons and of the journey to Mictlan. And so one thing that I did here in this story is there's different codices, different books that Mesoamerican people made that reference the story, the encounter between Feather Serpent, between Quetzalcoatl and Mictlantecutli. There's also different crónicas, I guess they're called, different stories that indigenous people told soon after the conquest that were written down that also mentioned the story. But very little is mentioned, actually, of how Feather Serpent, of how Quetzalcoatl got through the different regions of Mictlan. So that's kind of where my creative part came in. I tried to imagine, in the story, to give a few examples. Like the first region is you have to cross this river, and Quetzalcoatl, Feather Serpent, gets help from Xolotl, this spirit guide, this dog. And then, for example, there's these mountains, this area called Tepeme Monamictlan, or Monamictlan, I guess. And so I try to work these boulders, these mountains that crash into one another. And so I tried to think, how would have he crossed through that? So I thought that maybe he would have used his báculo, his staff, to stop the mountains. And so then I tried thinking of different ways that he would be able to go through these different dangers that he would have to go through. So that part is my own kind of imagination, trying to figure out how he would have reached Mictlantecutli. And so then when I wrote the story, again, I sent it to my editor, and he liked it. He thought it was much more focused. There was a lot clearer, and he thought that was a good approach, focusing on that one story. And then from there, it was revising it and sketching it and illustrating it, and that whole process always takes me, I would say, at least 6 months, sometimes longer. But yeah, so it was basically a story that I first thought about many years ago, and I kind of let it sit for a little bit when it was first turned down. And then I revisited it and tried to focus more on part of the story.
Oh, sorry. I think someone's mic behind or in the background is on. So you mentioned that the Cholo dog and all the other little snippets, that was your creative part, right? That you brought to the table of the story. Was there any history behind that, or you just?
Well, so yeah, so you were asking about research. So, the other thing that I researched a little was Mictlan and the underworld. And so there's other stories, or I guess other codices that mention the different regions Mictlan. There's 9 different regions. And, so like in the story, it's like the regions I did not make up, that's something that, so the first region is crossing this river. Then it's the mountains that crash into one another. Sorry, I keep going like this. It's
This
the
camera is
mirror.
always.
The camera.
Yeah, it's always weird.
Then there's an obsidian mountain, a mountain made out of obsidian. There's this very cold place where it snows. There's this area where the wind blows really hard and it makes people fly off. There's an area where it rains arrows. There's an area where jaguars try to eat your heart. There's then a person would have to, I guess a spirit would have to cross a river again, but this time there's this large reptile sleeping underneath. And then there's this place with a lot of fog and smoke where kind of a spirit would sort of drift until they finally reach the last stage where Mictlantecutli dwells. So there's different crónicas, there's different codices that talk about these regions. And I guess that would be sort of like a person, a body, the process it would go through to become a skeleton. I'm trying to think of how long that was supposed to take. I mentioned it somewhere in the book in an author's note at the back. But the amount of time that a person would take to go to Mictlan is sort of the amount of time that a body of someone that has passed away would take to decompose. So that part is things that appear in different codices and in different crónicas, and then where I used my imagination was trying to think how he would overcome those things so that his body wouldn't get cut, so that he wouldn't get crushed by the boulders and all these things.
I mean, I gotta admit, you did it so creatively. I thought it was part of the mythology. That's why I was like, oh, that was your imagination. That's cool. So I enjoyed that part and knowing about that.
Thank you. Yeah.
But
all of the ways he gets through it are so clever. Like it was really entertaining for us. When we were preparing, we were talking about all the ones that we liked the most and were most afraid of. So,
yeah. And then there's another question about the Cholo dog that we will bring up later. Yeah. I just noted something when you were reading it to us that I'm like, oh, okay. But let's move on to the next question. So your art is stunning. What was it about the Mixtec codices that sparked your inspiration to stick with this art style? And were there any other art styles that you found inspirational or considered using?
Yeah, so I've been drawing this style inspired by PreColumbian Art for more than 10 years now. My drawings are very flat, very stylized. People always appear in profile. Sometimes the way I draw ears, I guess here we can't see his ear, but it looks a little bit like a number. Let me find an example here. It looks a little bit like a number 3. A kid once told me it looked kind of like the slice of mushroom on a pizza. They have earrings, so I guess it's a little harder to tell.
I do see it though.
Yeah, I see it.
The nails are very round, very white. So it's very stylized. And those drawings are inspired by these kinds of drawings.
Oh, that makes sense.
These are drawings that the Mixtec people made. The Mixtecs, it's a civilization similar to the Aztecs, to the Mayan. They made books. And the books folded out like this, like accordions. They were really long, but it's only a fraction of one. And in their books, they would tell the stories of their warriors, their kings, their different creation myths. And so I'm inspired by these drawings. And how I became interested in this art, I'd be lying, I grew up in Mexico, but I'd be lying if I said that I was always interested in PreColumbian art, Like as a kid, what I liked were comic books. That was one of the, like Spider-Man and X-Men, and my cousins and I would collect the comics and try to make up our own superheroes. Later on, I really got into political cartoons. I went to a very arts-oriented high school, and I did a lot of painting, a lot of black and white photography. So I've explored a lot of things, since I was a kid. And then but then as a teenager, I came to the U.S. I attended a high school in Massachusetts, and then I went to a university in New York City, to Parsons School of Design. And as I spent more time in the US, I kind of began to miss things from Mexico. You know, the food, music, different traditions. And I just really became interested in Mexican culture and Mexican American culture and issues that affect people of Mexican origin. And so I would often try and, you know, the different assignments that I had in my classes, I would connect it to that, to my background somehow. Like I remember I took a photography class and I went and photographed an immigrant protest that was happening, you know. Or I also did a lot of writing in college at Parsons sister school, a university called Eugene Lang, and so I was able to take class in both universities. And there I would do, you know, like I did a lot of fiction. I would write fiction, and I remember setting different stories that take place in Mexico, and so I would try and connect it to my background. And my last year in college, I had to come up with a senior project. And at the time, I volunteered at this worker center where I met a friend named Sergio, and Sergio's Mixtec. And there's a large Mixtec community in New York in the tri-state area. And so I didn't know this until I met him, and you know I would hear him speaking his Mixtec dialect with his cousins, with other guys that he worked with at this restaurant. And so I thought that that was really interesting. And I decided that I wanted to do my senior project about that. So I made a kind of graphic novel about his journey from his small village in Guerrero, where he grew up, to coming to the US, and then also to organizing, because a story that I think was something that was very inspiring about him when I met him is that he had successfully protested. He was and was able to recuperate all this money that he was owed, and improve the working conditions at his restaurant, because him and these other guys that he worked with, other Mixtec guys who were and other people from other countries too. There were also a lot of Chinese workers that were involved in this protest. They weren't being paid well, and because they were undocumented, because some of them were undocumented. So anyway, so the story is called Journey of a Mixteco. Journey of Mixteco, and these are some images from it. This is the one that I printed myself when I was in college.
Oh my God.
And so here's Sergio telling his story, and he's sitting in the subway train, and then the whole story is kind of like a big speech bubble. You know, and so there he is, growing up in Guerrero. You know, when he came to he had to work from a very young age, because his father passed away. He sort of kind of became responsible for his family, and then he came to the U.S. without documents. And you know, eventually he got through. He was caught by the Border Patrol the first time he tried, and then this is some of the jobs that he had. Where is that? And that it's very common for Mixtec guys, Mexican guys, to have in New York. And so this was my senior project, and it's all inspired by these kinds of drawings. And that's how I first came up with my illustration style and why I draw like that. And one thing that you may notice that I do differently is that I use a lot of textures. So, for example, you know, if you see this drawing here of Sergio's jeans, his jeans look like real jeans, you know, or different parts of the book. You know, sometimes the hair, sometimes different. You know, the feathers look like real feathers in this one. And so I do a kind of digital collage where I draw on a piece of paper, and then I scan my drawing. And then after I scan my drawing, I use Photoshop basically and collage different textures into them. And so hopefully it's this interesting combination of something that's reminiscent of this, you know, ancient art of Mesoamerican art, but that is also hopefully kind of modern and interesting looking.
And do you scan like the textile pieces like of jeans and stuff, or do you just find them like the textile stuff, are those things that belong to you?
Some of them. So yeah, some things, you know, like, yeah, sometimes I'll put a pair of pants or a piece of paper, you know, like for this, you know, for the brown, I think it was like a paper bag that I got at some point, and I put that. And but for other things, you know, like hair, it'd be hard to scan hair. I would have to hair.
Please do, please do.
So I can photograph some things. I'll photograph someone's hair. I'll photograph, you know, a brick wall or something. And a lot of things I find on the internet, you know, a lot of textures. I'll just search online and find images, and then I'll use those
Cool.
to collage.
And the book you showed us, that's never been published by a publisher, right? So this is just you and your own. Because I know that style. You've written a book in that
So
style.
yeah, let me grab the other one really quick. I should have had it closer by.
It's okay. We didn't say we were gonna talk about it, but yeah, that style is something I've noticed in Duncan's work, and so I'm really glad he showed it to us.
Yeah, so
me
the
too.
one I
It's
made in
fascinating.
college at first came out I did it. I started working on it in 2000. I graduated in 2008. So I probably first worked on it. I started working on it probably in 2007. And then, this eventually happened is that a professor at my university, she wasn't my teacher, but, one day they came to critique our class, different teachers from the university. And she really liked what I was doing. We put our artwork up on the walls. And she said that she had illustrated some children's books. So she introduced me to this editor, a man named Howard at Abrams Books. And he liked my work. But he said, this book that you're doing, it's kind of an odd format. It's for an older audience. The things I do are picture books. So if we receive a manuscript that we think suits your style, we'll get in touch. We'd love to work with you. I'd love to work with you. And I said, that's great. I like writing too. I'm actually taking a bunch of writing classes. Maybe I can write the picture book. And so then he told me some things about picture books. He was like, well, they're usually 32 pages long because that's a very efficient way to print it. So, publisher is a business, so they don't want to waste paper. And then he said, leave a title page there, a copyright page. I suggest you make your protagonist, maybe a kid or an animal, someone that young readers can identify with. And if you write something, send it to me. And I wrote a manuscript. Here, let me grab that one really quick too.
We're just making you bring your whole bookshelf.
Just bring it all.
Just move it. I mean, at least it's in his office. So.
Yeah.
About two cousins, one that lives in a rural community in Mexico and one that lives in an urban center in the U.S. And in English, called Dear Primo, a letter to my cousin. There's an edition in Spanish called Dear Primo, una carta para ti. And so I wrote it, and I'd never written a picture book. So, I wrote it out, and I thought I should make a rhyme like Dr. Seuss, because everyone loves Dr. Seuss. And I typed it. I wrote it. I typed it. I sent it to his editor. And sometime later, he got back to me and he said, I like this idea about these two cousins, one that lives in Mexico, one that lives in the U.S. a lot. I've seen your artwork. I think it's very cool. But no rhyming, please.
Leave that for Dr. Seuss, right?
Yeah. So I had to revise it, but eventually it did become my first published book. It was actually my first job after sort of my first formal job after I graduated from. I've been doing a lot of dog walking and babysitting and all sorts of other odd jobs while I was in college. But it was my first job after I graduated. And so this opportunity, this book really opened me to this world of making books for children. But going back to the original question, some years later, I showed them the book again because I didn't finish it. When I wrote this one, I just got to the first half of the story, and I never finished the second half. I basically ran out of time when I was in college about the organizing effort. And so some years later, in I think it's 2018. Yeah, in 2018, I was finally able to publish. It comes in this case, Undocumented: A Worker's Fight. And so, I used a lot of the original artwork. Some of it I changed a little, but it folds out like that, like an accordion. And it tells, in this story, I call him Juan because it's mostly inspired by Sergio's story, but I also took other stories from people I met at this worker center at NMAS, the National Mobilization Against Sweatshops in the Lower East Side in New York. But then I was finally able to, in this one, I'm able to talk about the organizing effort and the struggles that Sergio, in this case, Juan, was going through. Like his wife was pregnant while he was trying to organize this when they filed this complaint. And, the boss was giving him less hours to work and sort of finding ways to punish him basically for doing this protest. So I'm very happy that eventually it took basically 10 years, but eventually I was able to publish what was my senior project.
Wow, and does Sergio, has he seen the book?
I've lost touch with him, sadly. But some of the people that I know from NMAS, from the National Mobilization Against Sweatshops, I'm still in touch with them, and they've seen it, and other people. Um, there were, when I met him, he was helping other guys. He was helping these Mixtec delivery workers at this restaurant in the Upper West Side in New York that were trying to organize. He was sort of sharing his experience of how he had done that, and so I still, they've seen some of it because they're still involved with NMAS. So I've lost touch with Sergio, but a friend named Josephine who was involved with the Chinese workers, and that was sort of like the leader of them or helping them. I'm still in touch with, and she's a teacher, and she's in the project, and she was very helpful with it.
That's cool. And also for all those watching, you can check out these books at the library. So they are available. But that's great.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's all right. So when you are deciding to work on the books that you're creating or illustrating, how do you decide what your next project will be and what the mythology behind it will be? Is there any particular thing you draw inspiration from, or how do you decide?
It's a combination of things. I mean, I guess the first thing is not everything I write becomes a book. I would say out of every 5-10 things I write, one becomes a book. So part of it is being able to sell it, being able to convince a publisher that this is a project worth publishing. So yeah, there's, lots of different ideas I've had, and oftentimes I revisit them. Like in the case of Feathered Serpent, I showed it, and then my editor didn't think that was a good project at first, but after I reworked it, it eventually became published. But I try and switch it up. That's another kind of, like some of the books I've done are nonfiction, like here nearby I have this one, Soldier for Equality, Jose La Luz, Science and the Great War. And the book I had done before this one was maybe Danza, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd done a couple of nonfiction books, so I wanted to do like a fiction project next. So I try and switch it up a little bit, so that hopefully my work doesn't feel too, just to have some variety in it. So those are some of the things. Some is what I'm able to convince someone to do, and then for myself also, I think try and have some variety. But there's definitely some interest, I'm very interested in social justice. I'm definitely very interested in art, and very interested in unsung heroes, people that maybe are not famous, but I think their stories are very important. And definitely also very interested in Mesoamerican pre-Columbian mythology. It's another thing that I really enjoy.
Are there any of your other books that you initially were rejected and then you revisited and re-edited?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. This one is the one that comes to mind right now.
Okay.
And sometimes something gets approved, but like, for example, with this one, with Soldier for Equality, it's based on Jose de la Luz Sáenz diary. He was a soldier, Mexican-American soldier from Texas that fought in World War I. And he kept his diary about all his experiences during the war. But he was also very critical of of how Mexican-American people were treated in Texas, and wrote a lot about that. And when he came back from the war, he became an activist. And he's one of the founders of LULAC, the largest organization that fights for Latinx people in the U.S. And so, I wrote I was able to sort of convince my editor that this was a good book, and he said, okay, let's do it, and then I wrote it, and I wrote my first manuscript, and he was like, you got to redo this. Because in my first manuscript, I was trying to sort of talk about all the different, like World War I there were all these new weapons that were being used, and there were all these countries that were involved, and I was trying to sort of like explain it all, and it was kind of very broad and encyclopedic. And so he was like, you need to narrow it down, you need to focus more on him. So I had to rewrite it completely. And then I rewrote it, focusing on him. And he said, okay, this is much better now. This is much more focused, but you need more of a story. There's not enough of an arc here. And so then I tried to think about that and what I thought the arc should be, or what the arc is. is that, like the first part of the book is him before he goes to the war, and kind of like the second and third part are about him during the war, and then the fourth part is after he comes back and how the war transformed them and really encouraged them to kind of fight for his rights and for the rights of Mexican American and Mexican people like him in Texas and in other parts of the Southwest. Um, and so then eventually it was the manuscript was approved, or then we were happy with it. But even though it was sort of approved at first, it did radically change many times. It took a while to find the shape and the manuscript for it.
So it's when you start the illustration, when you're both writing and illustrating the book, you are able to change the text, right, while you're illustrating, or is it just, it's not set?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm doing the writing and illustrations, different author illustrators do it differently. I know some people that start with the drawings. I start with the text. As I'm writing, I always have in mind the design of the book. I'll do little thumbnails, little doodles, which what I think will go on each page. How I'm gonna break it down, but I won't do anything very involved. And then once that manuscript feels close to done, maybe it's not perfect, maybe I'm still revising, but it's not like a complete revision. Maybe it's a paragraph, a sentence, some words, then I'll do sketches for the whole book. But yeah, I usually start with the writing. But yeah, if I'm, most of the books I've done, I have written and illustrated myself. I wrote and illustrated myself. And yeah, sometimes there are times when I go back, and if I do an illustration, I'll change something in the text. For example, I did a book called Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote.
Yes.
And in my initial manuscript, I would mention the grandmother, the abuelita, several times. But then there's no abuelita in the drawings. I didn't want to just kind of squeeze her in there. So I was like, well, maybe I can just, cut the abuelita from the actual text kind of thing. So, that's when I'm the author and illustrator, that's one of the great things that I can kind of go back and forth, and hopefully that'll make the text and the illustrations work very well together.
Oh my God, you took Abuelita out?
I know.
The atrocity. So did you ever go back to rhyming then? Is that something that you ever
No, not very much. I did a book called Funny Bones. And so I wrote a calavera, a literary calavera that rhymes for the book. But it's it's not a whole book. It's just one page. I guess I'm good enough for one page, but maybe not.
I mean, that's what we can expect. Your future, I'm going to manifest it that we're going to get a rhyming book from you, Duncan.
Yeah, we're going to wait for it. I'm sure it'll be great. It'll be excellent.
Exactly. All right. So talking more about the Feathered Serpent and the Five Sons, which of the 9 regions was your favorite to illustrate? And if you had to cross one of the 9 regions, which one do you think you would have been the hardest for you to cross?
I
know. We were thinking about this hard and strong when we were writing this question.
I think my favorite was the one where they strapped the sandals on, the rocks underneath. I thought that was really clever. And then I think the one we were most scared of was the darkness with the serpent.
I enjoyed illustrating this one a lot with the jaguars.
That's cute.
One thing that I'm very happy with the design of this book, and I don't know if you noticed this, but when the story starts, it's full color. But then as we journey through the regions of Mictlan, the illustrations start to lose color little by little. They start becoming more grayish. And then by the time we reach the last region, it's all, it's black and white. Well, it's gray tones. It's a grayscale. So that's one thing that I'm proud of, that whole sequence, of how the, I just think it works well, not just as one illustration, but as different illustrations working together. And then as far as I don't know if it'll be the worst, but one region I wouldn't want to cross is probably the snow one. I'm a Mexican baby, so I like my warm blackness to be warm. So I don't do that well in cold. I do all right for a few days, but winters can be long and hard sometimes. So Maybe that would be
Wow.
challenging for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Celia was right. I think I wear glasses and contacts. It frightens me not to be able to see. So she was head on with that one.
Yeah.
That's cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed the sandal one. That was
Yeah, the sandal one was really cool. The one with the tigers, just the concept of him throwing it, also really great.
We did
I don't
talk
wanna-
about that.
Spoilers for people, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and with that, I meant to mention this earlier, but yeah, so one thing that I try doing is that he has different, here in this part of the story, he gathers his chimali, his shield, his staff, his shell ornament for good luck, and his tilmatli, his cape. And so all of those things that he takes with him help him along the way. There are things that he uses and loses throughout the journey and able to overcome the different regions.
I think that page is actually, that spread is very significant because when you mentioned like from color to darkness, you see it a lot. Like you see it projected in that page, and then the items.
Yeah. That's kind of the same transition. And I tried doing a little bit of it in the front cover too.
Oh,
maybe it's not as obvious, but
I see it.
Yeah.
This is why we like talking to you all, because I'll point out things and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't recognize.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed it on the cover at all. So now I probably shouldn't look down. I'll look later, but yeah.
Cool.
So you introduce the Cholo dog in the first region, and he essentially becomes the feathered serpent's guide. So what is your familiarity with the Cholo and other myths or legends? And did you learn anything new about it while writing this book?
Well, I know he's considered a nahual, a sort of twin spirit, or sort of a animal spirit twin for feather serpent, and they're both associated with Venus, with the star Venus, and I mean, I think one challenging thing with mythology is that, I guess the worldview of Mesoamerican people was so different, and so unique and so different than ours. Yeah, I mean, I think for example, the journey into Mictlan can kind of represent also kind of the journey of the day, the day becoming night, and then the kind of the morning stars shining again. So there's a lot of kind of imagery and different readings that mythology can have. I tried doing it in a way that was hopefully engaging for young readers, and hopefully kind of that relatable, and that they can enjoy, that they can be entertained by and curious by. But I think for people that enjoy this is hopefully a good introduction to myths that can be very complex, because they can be, they can have different readings and different interpretations.
And the Cholo dog, it seems like he began helping him, the feathered serpent, and then he, I want to say, takes a break, right? It just becomes a partner, and then again at the dark scene, he's also the guide. So it was really cool to see this side character that became very helpful, and I didn't notice that until you were reading it to us, where I was like, oh my god. And so and
then I tried to have him help again when he distracts
that's true.
The Mictlan Tecutli, so feather serpent can try to get away, can try to escape.
I like it. All right, so our next question is, if you were one of the gods, what materials would you have used to create humans?
I mean, I think corn is a pretty good choice, corn is pretty delicious,
That's true.
If they don't come out right, you can just, make them into
make something. You'll get something out of it using corn. That is interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, my favorite part was when the humans were like lazy, right? And they just wanted to like dance and eat. And I was like, well, that's a mood. Don't we all want to do that? But that's cool.
And like I said, there's different ones. I chose to, like I said, it's for young readers. There's other ones where sort of like there's other versions of this story where it's sort of like a different kind of god becomes the sun, and like this. There's other sort of versions of the five sons where there's catastrophes. Like in this one, they turn them into into birds, but in one, for example, they turn to fish because there's this great flood. This There's like a kind of catastrophe at the end of each era. There's like a great fire. There's a great flood. There's like these really strong winds. But yeah, I thought I tried to focus on. I decided to go with this idea of them kind of becoming different things. That then it's also different things in our world that populate the world. And so then in the last spread of the illustrations, they're there. The mountains are still there. The birds, the monkeys, the fish. The things that were made in the previous suns are still with us in the fifth sun.
That's cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you write most of your books and illustrate them, but you also illustrate for others. So we were wondering, when you illustrate for others, how much creative freedom you have, and do you typically work directly with the author to ensure that their vision comes to life, or are you just on your own?
Typically, you're on your own. Not on your own, but for example, this, my latest one, the latest book I've illustrated, Child of the Flower Song People, was written by Gloria Mezcua, and I've never met Gloria. We've emailed a few times and stuff, but I've never met her in person. Hopefully, we'll get to meet soon. One thing that is nice, one thing that I've enjoyed of illustrating books for other people is that other authors do things differently. For example, in her story, she writes in verse. She's a poet, and so that's not something that I do. And so that sometimes presents opportunities to try new things out. If I can grab another book really quick, I'll be right back.
Of course.
Of course.
I'm telling you, just bring the bookshelf.
Or move the computer.
Oh man, I guess we did. This comes to show how many books Duncan has written and are available at our library. So
Yes.
So this is a different one, but it's just, I think this example make it a little bit more clear. Called Esquivel, that I didn't write. It was written by Susan Wood, and it's about a very creative musician, Esquivel. And he used all these really interesting instruments. He's sort of considered like the godfather of lounge music, kind of swanky and funky. And so the author in this story, she uses a lot of noises, a lot of sounds in her writing. And so then for me as an illustrator, that's something that I haven't done as a writer much. And as an illustrator, what that opportunity was for me was to try and imagine, trying to draw those sounds, So here there's different examples of sounds she wrote in the text, lop, bleep, bleep, bloop. And so how would that look, how would that look physically? Are they zoundzing, wow, squiddly diddly squeak? So trying to hand letter and kind of create the letters that look like the sound is something that I wouldn't have done. It was an opportunity that presented itself by doing someone else's text. And so there were those kinds of opportunities too with Gloria's text. More than anything, I didn't know about Luz Jimenez, who was an indigenous woman. She's in very famous pieces of artwork, because she was a model for Diego Rivera, for Tina Modotti, Jean Charlotte, all these very important, famous artists of the 20th century. And, I've made a book about Diego Rivera myself, but I never considered like the person in the painting, and so I think it was really interesting because she was also very interested in Nahuatl culture and preserving her Nahuatl culture and preserving the Nahuatl language. So I was very happy to illustrate and to learn about her.
It was a beautiful story. I also was not familiar, but her words and your illustrations really, brought it to life. And I am interested in knowing more about herself, but that'll be a different day. But they were beautiful. Was there anything that you had a particularly difficult time bringing to life in the page, or was it all pretty easy for you?
No. I mean, I think when it's someone else's text, like I can't be like, oh, well, I want to get rid of this line because I'm not going to draw the grandma or something.
You don't want to get rid of grandma.
Right.
There you kind of have to stick with the text. I mean, I guess if there's something that is very important, I could talk to the editor or something. But like I said, it forces you to try and find different solutions. With this book, I try to reference some of Rivera's artwork and of the other people that painted Luz. So, for example, her here with the metate. There's a famous painting that Diego Rivera did of her La Molendera, where she's grinding corn, or here like hilando, using the string with her toes. So some of the illustrations, they're done in my style, but they're inspired by pieces of art that other artists made that include Luz Jimenez.
Wow.
Like this one, for example, at the end, there's this sculpture, this fountain in Parque Mexico in Mexico City that Luz Jimenez modeled for.
That's cool. I really like seeing that, like your take on art pieces that have already been created. I think that was a really cool, interesting take on that.
Yeah.
All right. So we promised Duncan that he was going to get 100 questions, actually like 1 million questions we said, but we'll humble and say 100. So we are going to start reading our audience questions. And the first one is by Josue Martinez, and he says, thank you for using storytelling and amazing illustrations to teach kids and adults about our history. Have you thought about doing separate stories about different tribes, Aztec, Olmecas, Mayas? It would be important and cool for kids to learn history about these different tribes through your beautiful books. Gracias.
Yeah, I mean, there's just it's endless, I mean, I love being an author and illustrator because there's the great thing is I get to learn about things, I get to learn more about topics that I'm interested in. Like a book I'm actually currently working on now is about the codices, about Mesoamerican books. And even though I've been inspired by them for a long time, I wanted to learn more about it, and kind of who were the people that made them and how did they make them. And so yeah, I love being an author and illustrator because it's an opportunity to learn about things that I'm interested in and to share things that I care about. So yeah, hopefully I'll do, Mesoamerican cult history is so rich and there's so many different groups and so many things to explore that there's just so much there. Yeah, I would love to do more books about different myths and different peoples.
Cool. We're excited to see them coming.
Yeah.
So.
Our next question is also from Josue. So Josue Martinez wants to know what authors or illustrators or other stories inspire you.
So, I mean, some of the things that, like I said, the first things that got me interested in drawing were comic books, manga, those are things that I loved as a kid and I still love. And that's what really kind of got me drawing, when I was a kid, my family and we used to live near Mexico City on the I guess the metropolitan area there, and but then we moved to San Miguel, and so when we moved, we didn't have a TV. My parents had sold a lot of things that we owned in the apartment, and I didn't know a lot of kids in my neighborhood. I didn't know a lot of kids in my school, so I'd borrow a lot of books from my school library. And they had a series called Choose Your Own Adventure. And I would borrow it and, read the book and try and read it on all the different ways that I could. And then I would take it back a few days later and borrow another one. And that kind of is what got me thinking, maybe I could become a writer someday. That was some of my first inspiration, just kind of reading for fun. And then thinking, maybe that's something I can do. I was thinking recently, there's a Mexican cartoonist named Rius. He passed away about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago. And I think he was a very big inspiration for me. He did these books that talked about, the environment, about politics, about philosophy, kind of like books for beginners. But he was very funny, very political, very critical of the government. And that was a big inspiration for me, I think, especially when I was a little, more in high school and in college. And I think I try and do something very different, but similar in the sense that I try and learn about a topic as much as I can, and then hopefully present it to young readers in an interesting way. Um, so that's definitely another big inspiration. Those are some that I can think of the top of my head.
That is really interesting. And you mentioned that comic books and superheroes was something that was of interest of you growing up. Have you ever considered emerging, like something of merging both creative processes in a storyline of creating your own superhero?
Um, I haven't. I mean, when I did Journey of Mixteco, I mean, I love comic books and also, like graphic novels. Like I drew a lot of inspiration from Persepolis and Mouse and different graphic novels that talk about history, that talk about politics, and that's something that I wanted to do for my project. Um, I have huge respect for people that do graphic novels because takes so much work. It's like, oh, I've been working on this for the last 3 years, 5 years, and so I've never attempted to do that. But yeah, maybe at some point, it's definitely something where I find a lot of inspiration. I haven't quite tried it myself, and I have, like I said, huge respect for the people that do it.
Imagine a 3-year project. I mean, yes, we give mad props to comic book creators. All right, so our next question is by Tito, who says, do you write, I think there's one above, do you write your original drafts in Spanish or English?
Usually in English, because I work with an editor. In like my books, I've done 13 books now. They're all published in the US in English. There's some that are available a few that are available in Spanish, and more coming out. I did the translation for some of them that are coming out soon. There's going to be a Spanish version of Feather Serpent coming out next year, I believe. And I did the translation for it, which I was very happy to do. But I came to the US when I was about 15, 16. And so I attended high school and college in the US. And so all the essays, all the kind of projects that I had to write were pretty much in English. So I've done a lot more writing in my life in English, to be honest. So I usually end up writing in English. Sometimes when I'm stuck in a project, I'll try and rewrite it in Spanish, and that sometimes helps me, like, look at it from a different angle. Not a different angle, but just kind of like a fresh way to try and revisit it.
That is cool. Maybe we should start doing that, Celia. I was like, wow, you would think a writer's block?
We'll do that. We'll start doing it. We'll rewrite things or questions and stuff. Our next question is from Cristina de la Garza. Will you ever have a follow-up to Dear Primo? My students wanted to know if the Primos ever get to meet. They loved the book, and many have family members outside of the U.S. that they've never met.
Yeah, I've thought about it several times, and I would like to do a follow-up. I have a couple of ideas of how that could work. I haven't, I got to first write it, and then I've got to convince my publisher or a publisher to do it. But yeah, I think it would be cool to do a story where they actually get to meet.
Will this one rhyme or not?
We're like hoping, coming back, manifesting it strong. All right. So
I respect the people that can rhyme, definitely, especially like books that like it's the whole story. Like, I can do little snippets here, but to create a whole book, that takes a lot of skill.
Yeah,
it's
and
a lot.
The words, like it's really creative how people mesh words together for him to. It's a skill, and we appreciate those who can do it. So we missed a question by Joseph, and he says they asked what your next book is.
Yes. So, well, the Child of the Flower Song People, it came out this fall. So, this is available now, and it's my most recent book that I've worked on. I didn't write it, but I illustrated it, and I'm very proud of it, very happy that I got to work on it. And currently, I'm working on a book about the Mesoamerican codices and the people, the Tlacuilos, that made them. So that'll be out sometime next fall. Currently, the text is done, the sketches are mostly done, and now it's a matter of putting color and texture. So I'll be doing that for the months to follow, so that the book can come out sometime maybe next September, more or less.
And do you ever work on multiple projects at the same time?
There are times when I don't do it much. And, I don't believe in multitasking. I can't do it. I respect the people that can do it, because I cannot do it. So I usually finish one project fully before I start another one. There's a few things, like, for example, I have ideas for other books, and I have manuscripts that I've sent that will hopefully be approved for future books. But once I'm kind of really working a book, I'm pretty focused on that until I see it through. I know that there's other artists, other authors, illustrators that have, multiple things going on at once. But for me, usually it's one project at a time.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's also a skill that's like intense.
Yeah.
We really respect it, but
knowing yourself.
Yeah, we have one more question. So several of your books, you said you have about 13 now, and several of them are award winners and have been recognized. So we were wondering how it feels to get that call to say, hey, you won the Pura Belpre award. So how does it feel to be an award-winning author or illustrator?
It feels great. I mean, I'm a pretty serious person, so the people that give me the call probably don't think that. I like to tell a story that one time I was with my wife, and we were, we had parked somewhere, and we were going back to the car, and there was a big dent in the car, and she was like, "I can't believe they did this to the car," and I was like, "I am so angry right now." So. Unfortunately, actually, it wasn't our car. It was a car that looked just like ours. But
well,
good.
I'm not the most effusive, but it's amazing. I feel so lucky for all the love, all the support that the books have received, and especially now. I think when when I was a little younger, when I was first started doing it, I was more like thought that was too cool or something, But now I see just how hard people work, and how many thousands of books get published, and how a lot of great books don't, just kind of fall through the cracks a little, or get overshadowed by other books that are also great, So I just feel very, very, very happy and grateful for all the support, all the attention that my work has received. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and it's cool to see. It's been really cool to see your journey as an illustrator and author throughout the years, because me and Seda have been following you for a few years, and so it's been real incredible. But do you have interesting or awkward story about how or what you were doing when you received the call? Because we love hearing these things, like when you got the Pura Belpre. He's like, no, I don't want to.
I try not to think about it. I guess I try to I try to avoid knowing when the for example, the ALA, when the winter conference is happening.
Yeah.
And so I try not to avoid it, but it's almost somehow I end up saying, "Oh, it's January 8th or something," And then I try not to think about it during the day, and I try not to, and I can't remember what year it was. Maybe it was I don't know if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago or something. And so I was all bummed out that they hadn't called. I mean, there's other great books, and I've gotten so much recognition, and I was like, oh, well, maybe next year, I'm working on this book and stuff. And then I can't remember, but it was I got an email from a publisher, they've been trying to call you, and you change the phone or something, it's like,
it's on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah,
and it was everyone else left, all the committee had to go home, but we're so happy we finally got in touch with you. And there I was, all sulky. But I'm super grateful for so much, and that they've recognized so many of my books. That it hasn't been just a one book thing, but that throughout the years there's been so much support for so many of them.
It's cool. Pues te lo mereces. And so now that we're almost coming to a conclusion, we like to play this game called This or That, and so rapid fire questions. So this just is for fun and allows us to learn a little bit more about you. So we're going to say something really quickly. As you can tell, my voice is getting really fast now because we want you to answer really fast. And so you tell us which one you prefer. So
don't think about it. Just say it. Okay, ready? Café de olla or té?
Té.
Favorite mood booster song?
Favorite what?
Mood booster song. So I said that really fast.
That's hard. I don't know. I like 90s hip hop.
Oh. Pan dulce or polvorones?
Pan dulce.
New York or Mexico City?
That's too hard, man. I don't want to get kicked out of either. I don't want to lose my credit either. So I'll abstain from that one.
Okay.
Okay. Salsa verde or salsa roja?
That's hard too. Probably roja, I guess. I think there's more variety of roja, so I have a more spectrum. There's a lot of salsa rojas there.
Yeah. Okay. Cold weather or hot weather? Well, I think we know this.
Yeah, I can do cold weather for like a week, but I can't do it for months and months and months. So I guess hot weather, maybe. Medium.
Agua de,
Medium
agua de
weather.
betabel, agua de betabel or agua miel?
I'll go with agua de betabel because one time I had so much beet juice that I actually got sick. I didn't know that you could become a little sick from drinking too much iron, I guess, or something.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but it's also happened to me, right? I'm sorry. Okay, cajeta.
Yeah, like they were like, "You're sure you want a litro?" I was like, "Oh yeah."
You're like, I want to be healthy. And they're like, sir. Sorry. Oh, right, I got the giggles. Okay, cajeta or chocolate?
That's hard. I guess chocolate. I have to go chocolate.
Flying or driving?
That one again, sorry?
Flying or driving?
Flying. Better for the environment. No, wait, never mind. Walking, bicycle.
See.
Okay.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
That's hard too. Well, my daughter wants a cat and my son wants a dog, so I guess 1 and 1. I don't know.
So you can't say anything because then they'll hold you to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite Mexican candy?
I guess it would have to be either the mango or sandia lollipops with chili on it.
Oh, those are so.
Yeah.
Or tamarindo. I guess tamarindo with chile. Anything.
As long as they're
tamarindo
covered in
with
chile. Is that what we're going with?
Okay,
so
perfect.
favorite. All right. So favorite book you've illustrated?
Favorite book I've illustrated? Maybe Feather Serpent. I'm very proud of the illustrations of Feather Serpent. I'm very proud of Funny Bones too in terms of the illustrations. There's different books that I like for different reasons, but when it comes to the artwork, those are definitely some of my favorite ones because of that.
That's cool.
Favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday? I don't know. I'll have to think on that one.
It is hard. I mean, the
Well,
holidays are
I
coming
like
up.
Dia de Muertos. Dia de Muertos is coming up. Now it's in my house. It's become it's like a season.
Yeah.
It's like because we do some Halloween stuff and make the altar. Not last year and probably not this one, but we should go to the cemetery and spend time there with the other families. So I think it's a really nice holiday, and it's become like a whole
celebration.
A season.
That's cool. All right.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Telenovelas or movies? I think that's the next one, right?
Yeah.
Movies.
Don Francisco or Cristina?
Okay, ¿El Chupacabra o La Llorona?
La Llorona.
Okay, favorite animal to draw?
Maybe jaguars. I like drawing jaguars a lot.
Okay, so last one, ¿atole o champurrado?
I'll go with champurrado.
Yay! That's my favorite. Okay, that completes it. Thank you so much for playing with us.
Yeah, that was so fun. It was nice to get to know your preferences. So thank you so much for joining us. That was our last question. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation with author Duncan Tonatiuh. Remember to visit lapl.org to read more of Duncan's books. And remember that our next Year Author program is on Friday, October 22nd at 4 p.m. Join us as we chat with author Lilian Rivera as she discusses her new young adult novel, We Light Up the Sky. We are also excited to announce that Lea LA Literary Festival is back at La Plaza de Cultura y Artes this weekend. So the Los Angeles Public Library, we will be present tomorrow, Saturday starting at 10 a.m., issuing library cards and distributing hotspots with free internet service for students. We invite you to fly with new wings and celebrate Spanish literature at Lea LA 2021, Literary Festival and Ideas. For more information, visit leala.com. The URL will be in the comments and also on this screen. And thank you all so very much for attending our virtual Year Author program. We cannot wait to see you in 2 weeks with Lilium.
Thank you, everyone.